Hi everybody, welcome back to Lockdown Lessons part 49 now. With me today I've got Nigel Wilson from Financial Eye. So just wanted to say a big hello to you first, Nigel.
Hi Phil, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Very well. So for the people that actually don't know who you are and don't know what Financial Eye do, perhaps you could just explain a bit so they can get a grip as to how you help people.
Yeah, sure. I'm the founder of Financial Eye, who are advisors to law firms. So we provide financial compliance services as well as general commercial advice. In a former life, I was a CFO, and we've got a great team of experienced business professionals whose sole aim is in life is just to help businesses. So it's a great environment. Financial Eye are specific to law firms, but I also work with all other kinds of industries outside of that as well. It gives me great variety, but also a broad level of experience, which I'm able to bring to each of the different companies.
Fantastic, really well explained. So if we could sort of cast our mind back to March 2020 or around that period of time, at what point did you think there might be a problem commercially?
Well, I was actually away at the beginning of 2020. I was sunning myself and in one of the far reaches of the world, watching the BBC World News and watching the pandemic spread from China and into northern Italy, if you remember. And I actually had a board meeting whilst I was away in my hotel room, and one of the items on the agenda was the strategy for how this business was an auction house in Maidenhead. So it was at that point when I thought, well, actually, you know, if these guys are strategizing about how to deal with it, this isn't like SARS where it's just, you know, out east. This is going to impact the whole world. So that was the point that I really sort of thought that actually, you know, this is bigger than anyone had first imagined.
Yeah, I think there was that period of time where you're going through that sort of denial period where, yeah, this is probably just something that's happening over the other side of the world, nothing to see here. And then something happens on the news, and Italy going into lockdown was the thing that made me sit up and take notice. I thought, okay, that's quite serious. I noticed
yeah,
that.
well, I arrived home a couple of days before lockdown, so we bought toilet rolls in the local supermarket and packed them and brought them home. So yeah, that's when you know it's real.
Absolutely, when the shelves run dry, you know everyone's panicking like crazy. Yeah, so how have you managed to adapt then, Nigel, in terms of your business over the last 18 months or so?
Well, I mean, my business, I started it 10 years ago, and it was virtual right from the start. That was one of our aims. So, you know, everything has always been on here. We don't have an office and we don't have paperwork. Absolutely everything is electronically stored in a secure environment. But all businesses have been forced to adapt their business model. And what I say when I'm out and about with business is that actually the whole world embarks on the test of their business continuity plan. And I think that the thing is, you know, there's no coming back from it. It's all firms have been forced to adapt in a number of ways, but you know, things like the hybrid working model, I think, are here to stay, aren't they? So you know, but there's no going back to the world as we once knew it.
I think you're right, actually. I think there was obviously we've seen the what's happened to office space in central London. Out in the suburbs, it's actually is actually affected it quite positively, because I think a few people have moved away from central London and are moving into smaller offices in the suburbs. So yeah, it's not too bad where I'm based.
No, exactly, and we see that a lot with law firms, and you know, even the central London ones are consolidating offices and very much adopting sort of a hot desking process. So you know, whilst they have people who are in now, it's maybe 4 days a week, and you know, you don't have a desk with all the photos on and your 10 pairs of shoes underneath them. It really is a proper hot desking model, and law firms have been able to save significant costs by doing that, but with no loss of service. So that's been one of the clear wins, and of course the technology has been around for a long time, talking about the paperless office, as I can validate, and it does work. But firms are now realizing, actually, we've been paying for this stuff for all this time. And law firms in particular are now moving towards electronic file storage, which makes a hell of a difference, because why would you want to pay £30 a square foot for a box to sit in the office when you can have a body there?
Absolutely. So what sort of have there been any other wins at all that you've had as a business since lockdown started?
Yeah, well, look, it's, as I say, I mean, we, with the firms that we work with, we've been helping them adapt their model. And as I say, the auction house was a traditional, on-site auction, as well as a small amount of online as well. Whereas their business model has completely changed to on-site auction only, online auction only. So as a consequence, rather than only being able to do 1 or 2 auctions a month, they're now able to do 4 or 5 times that out of the same premises with the same people. So we're seeing that good firms are adapting and were early adapters and are nimble enough to be able to adapt their business model to suit the new world. Of course, other industries and other sectors, it hasn't been quite so easy for them. But the legal sector, as I say, that Financial Eye operates in, actually there have been some great opportunities there.
Good. So in terms of any sort of challenges that you've had as well, Nigel, over the last 18 months, what would you say has been your biggest issue?
Again, really, speaking on behalf of the clients that we work with and helping them through these, it's been forecasting cash requirements right at the beginning, and then casting our mind back, borrowing money. We had the bounce back loan and C-bills, which, of course, when it first came out, the banks were a little bit overzealous in their lending criteria, and it wasn't until until the government reminded them that actually we bailed the banks out when you had your financial crisis, so you now need to get this money out there. So we went through all of that with the businesses and their modelling, and then of course the job retention scheme, etc., and just general resource planning has been a huge challenge for everyone over the course of this period. The conveyancing firms in particular, obviously with the stamp duty holiday that everybody knows about, conveyancers were just overrun in March, particularly March and June, as the original period was supposed to come to an end, and then the extension did come to an end, and now we're on the tail off of that. But we saw firms who were doing 40-50% of their annual turnover in the month of June. So incredible pressures on staff who were already under pressure anyway, working remotely, and all of those other challenges. It's been a real challenge for lots of firms. But actually, I've been thinking about this a lot and talking with firms. I think the biggest challenges are actually going forward. As we come out of this, we've got to learn to live with COVID. It is a fact of life, and it seems like it is going to be around for a long while. Firms are now facing the anniversary of those loans that we talked about, and having to start repaying them. So actually, the challenge is bigger now than it was back then, because once you've got the cash in place, and most firms have been quite sensible with it and have had it on deposit and have kept it in reserve, and have been using it frugally, they now have to start repaying it. So it's all about, what does the next 12 months look like, and how well can they forecast the business going forward. And of course, everyone has had to adapt their HR practices, because we've got to live with, with HR and sickness, and people will have COVID, people will have colds and what have you. And as we move forward, what's the firm's policy on it? And when people are requesting flexible working, we're already seeing cases come through the tribunal where employers are being held up for refusing to allow what they foresee as being a reasonable request for somebody just to work less hours. And so it's something that all firms have to be aware of and have to plan, because you can't act in the way that you used to as an employer. You have to adapt and be more flexible about the way that you do these things. We're also seeing a lot of outsourcing, actually, as a result of what's been happening, because it's a natural extension as firms realise, actually, we've got remote workers. It actually makes no difference if they're in South Africa or if they're in South Croydon. They're still remote. There's practically no time difference. There are enormous cost savings to be had, and and huge amounts of very talented, skill-setted people available to outsource the work to. So there are some great opportunities as well as challenges out there, which and we're delighted to be helping firms with that.
Yeah, and also regarding South Africa, funny enough, I did an interview exactly like this around, must have been about 3 or 4 months ago now, with a guy that ran an outsourcing business based in South Africa. And he also added into the mix the other benefit being the exchange rate is extremely favourable for us Brits at the moment. So that's another great reason to think about outsourcing to South Africa. So good. So in terms of sort of what would you say you've learned about yourself, Nigel, over the last 18 months, and in terms of how you've managed to adapt?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is reaffirm my belief in the fact that business is all about relationships, and I think everybody's suffering with Zoom fatigue now. Though of course this is an absolute pleasure, Phil. But it's what's been really great just recently is getting back out there and seeing people face to face and talking to them. It's so important, because when you have a face-to-face meeting, we tend to go a little bit off piece, which you can't do on a Zoom, not as easily. And that's the point when you get to the real issues. So we tend to work with a lot of business owners, and they struggle to find somebody a confidant, because they're always frightened about being reported, or saying too much and losing a bank facility or whatever. So they struggle to find somebody to talk to, and we end up at Financial Eye being very much like a non-executive board member, so they can talk to us very frankly about what's really bothering them. So, and that's just great, because we're all business guys and we love that stuff, and we've been through it, and we know how important it is to find somebody that's actually shared that experience and can help you. And we don't profess to know everything, but because, as you can see, this hair would be grey if there was any left. We know a lot of people over time, and that's why we work with good business partners, much like yourself, to help businesses. So we don't profess to be able to do everything, but we generally know someone who can help.
Good. So the final 2 questions I always ask people, Nigel, on these interviews are: second to last one is who would be a sort of an ideal customer for you, not just in terms of the company size, but also the role within the business that you'd most like to speak to, and how would you go about helping them? Yeah,
well, in law firms, it's the COFA that we help, because they have the financial responsibility. So that's normally a fee-earning partner who is struggling to juggle both roles. So that's the sort of person that we want to get into. Typically, law firms are generally sort of up to 10 partners, that sort of thing. Although we work with bigger firms as well, we tend to work alongside their internal risk officers and that sort of thing. Whereas in a smaller firm, as I say, it's a fee earner who is only too happy to hand over things for us to take on their behalf. So we like to say, you can't hand over the role and the responsibility, but you can hand over the workload, and that's where we come in and deal with that. So, but as I say, outside of financial, we also work with all manner of businesses, so we're not restricted to law firms at all. We like owner managed businesses because we've been there ourselves, and those are the guys who we can really have an affinity with.
Fantastic. So final question for you, Nigel. If anyone wants to get in contact with you to find out more about yourself, more about Financial Eye, or to meet up face to face, even, who knows, how can they best reach you?
Absolutely. Well, LinkedIn is always great. We're very active on there, and of course via the website, which is financialeye.net. So either way, or of course they can always get in touch via you. Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. What I'll do is I'll post your contact details beneath this video in the comments box anyway, so people will be able to reach you nice and easily. But for now, Nigel, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure as always, and yeah, catch up soon.
Brilliant. See you soon, Phil. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.